In this lesson, we will learn how to create custom parameters. A lot of times when we create control rigs, we need certain objects that are part of that control rig to be controlled a very specific way. Take our turbines. Yes, we'll set up a way to have them spin based off of time, but then we'll want a custom parameter to control how fast or slow they spin. This custom parameter can also be used to turn off these fans. So that's just one area we'll use a custom parameter for. We'll also use parameters for the canopy and for our landing gear, just to name a few other areas. But let's say we go ahead and become familiar with Max's custom parameter tool. So what we do is first select the object that we'd like to add the custom parameter or parameters to. The best object here would be our control object, since that's the object that is going to be used the most to drive this aircraft. If you're working on a character rig and you need to add finger controls, chances are you'll want to add the custom parameters for your fingers to your arm control, since it makes sense to access the finger controls from that object. Alright, so with this main control object selected here, what we can do is head over to animation and grab our parameter editor and add a custom parameter from here. Or another way, if I were to close this out, is to use the hotkey Alt-1. Now we have several parameter types we can add, from integer to Boolean. We're going to go ahead and work with float, so we can use a specific value. And then we could also change our UI type. Here's a slider, here's a spinner. We're going to go ahead and just stick with spinner. You have the option to change that. And we could also name our parameter from here. We're going to create a test parameter, so I'm going to go ahead and name this test. When we hit enter, notice our testing rollout updates so we can see how our parameter will look. We can change its range from here, so if we wanted it to go from -10 to +10, we can most certainly do that. We can set our default value and also change the alignment. So I'm going to leave this set to center, and I'll now choose add. Alright, so the parameter has been added, but where to? So under the create panel hierarchy, it's under the modify panel, but here's the problem. We'll need to scroll all the way down to find the custom parameter. This is not too animator friendly. So to get around this, what we can do is create an attribute holder that will hold our parameter sets. That way, when the animator goes in and selects this object, they can very easily be brought to all of those parameters instead of having to scroll down to the very bottom, which is not too user friendly. Alright, so we've added this parameter. How can we go in and remove it? We'd select the object that holds the parameter, and now from the same dialog window, we would choose Edit Delete. So there's that parameter. Very important, if you decided on, let's say, changing any properties of this attribute, after you change those properties, you need to make sure that you choose Accept Parameter Changes and Apply Changes. If you do not do this, if you do not apply the changes, what's going to happen is that the parameter is going to remain the way it was created originally. So let's test this out. If I wanted to remove this parameter here, test, I'd choose delete parameter. But watch, when I go ahead and close out this dialog window, I go ahead and select the object, you can see that the attribute is still there. Now if we were to go back to edit and delete, select our parameter, delete it, and then choose Apply Changes. Now, our rollout updates, and no longer do we have our custom parameter. So I went ahead and removed the rollout, choose Apply Changes, and no longer does the rollout exist. Now, if we were to change any of the parameter properties, we can use Accept Parameter Changes. If I were to undo back, just pressing Ctrl Z a few times just to bring back the custom parameter. If we were to go to Edit, Delete, and with the parameter selected, if we were to change its minimum value to -5, hit Enter, we can now choose Accept Parameter Changes. Now we can go ahead and choose Apply Changes. And let's go ahead and test this out. If we were to go ahead and close this out, we should be able to get to a minimum value of 5, a -5 that is, and we can still get to a max of 10. So very important, we want to make sure we apply those changes. But again, I'm going to remove that parameter and its rollout. So let's go back to edit and delete. We can go in and select the parameter rollout and choose delete attribute, and now choose apply changes. So let's go ahead and create that attribute holder. So with our object selected, we can now, under the modify panel, go to our modify list. I'll press the A key so we can quickly get to the attribute holder. Here it is. Once it's been added, it might be a good idea to rename this for clarity. So let's right click and we will choose rename right here at the top. Let's go ahead and name this secondary controls. Okay, great. So watch. We can now go ahead and add parameters to this. Now, what I find to be useful, if we have created a parameter and have removed it and then created an attribute holder, just to make sure that the parameters will be added to the attribute holder, it's a good idea to just go ahead and close out the parameter editor just to make sure we can go in and reselect our object to make sure that the parameters will be added to our holder. Kind of refreshes things. All right, so with our object now selected, we can go ahead and press Alt-1 and we can start to create our parameters. So let's go ahead and go through and do that. The first parameter will be for our canopy. So we're going to go ahead and name this attribute to canopy. We'll leave the min and max range, so at 0 it will be closed and at 100% will be open. So now we can choose add and notice it has been added to the attribute holder. Very nice. The next one will be for our turrets. Be nice to have control for these. So let's go ahead and name the attribute to turrets. And again, we'll use a min and max range of 0 and 100%. We'll choose add. Okay, the next one will be swiveling controls for our turbines. All right, so let's go ahead and create our first swivel control for the left side, and then we can create a control for the right. If you wanted to, you can tie the two together, but why would we separate the two? Well, we'd want to separate them in order to have more control. So you can imagine as this starts to fly, it'd be nice to kind of offset the two turbines in order to get something that looks a bit more natural, because things tend to not move at the same time in real life. So we can break up those objects to avoid problems of twinning, which is very harmful in animation. Again, because objects in life do not move at the same time. All right, so what we'll do is go in and we will create our first swivel control. And we'll name this fan underscore swivel underscore L. We'll give this a range of -360 and +360. So we have a lot of control here. Now let's go ahead and choose add, and we'll go ahead and create one for the right side now. So we'll name this fan underscore swivel underscore R, and notice our min and max values have been saved, so we can simply choose add to create that parameter much faster. All right, let's go ahead and create one for our fan speed now. And that's going to be really fun to set up. We'll get to that shortly when we talk about expressions. So we'll name this fan speed. And it'd be good to have a minimum range of 0. So at 0, we'll make sure that there's no spin. And at 100%, we'll have our max spin speed. Let's go ahead and add it. Okay, we only have 2 more. And they will be for our front and center landing gear. So let's go in and create one for the front landing gear. We'll name this landing gear front. Surprise, surprise. All right, again, we will leave the min and max range. And the last one will be landing gear back or center. It's going to say back, but it's not necessarily at the back. We can say it's right there centered. You can name it back if you'd like. I'm going to go ahead and leave it set to center and choose add. All right, so we have all of our parameters in place. Very exciting. Now, Once this is finished, we now need a way to control certain objects of our aircraft using these parameters. So we'll start that in the next lesson when we talk about wiring parameters.